Hello and welcome to the Amsterdam Comedy Podcast. I'm Jonathan.
And I'm Greg. And this week, someone whose laundry I once did.
Socks and underwear are crucial. And I just replenished my underwear stock before I came over. So I always have like 20 pairs of underwear and 20 pairs of socks. So I always have fresh socks and underwear.
Tom Rhodes is the comedian's comedian. He grew up in Florida and got his start in the late 1980s, just as the American comedy scene was blooming like a ripe cantaloupe. I am now being told that cantaloupes do not bloom.
He even became Comedy Central's first comedian spokesperson when it was just getting started in the early 90s. Tom Rhodes almost had a really, really big sitcom back when he was long-haired and cute.
And he even had a late-night talk show in the Netherlands. We'll ask him how that happened.
And Tom is the consummate journeyman comic. He has no home address. He literally travels the world with his wife, living in hotel rooms. Subsequently, he can now only wash himself with tiny bars of soap.
And he even has his own podcast, Tom Rhodes Radio, where he interviews other comedians, gets them to talk about lots of personal things, thereby rendering our show totally superfluous. Did I just say that out loud?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Our expletive-laden interview with Tom Rhodes was recorded in front of a live audience consisting of my 9-year-old son in my living room, and for that, I may burn in hell.
We caught up with Tom when he and Greg, who is also a comedian, were touring around the Netherlands. Here's Tom.
Has this started?
Yeah, sure.
Oh, this is it. Oh, this is the most informal podcast I've ever been part of.
We're not fancy.
I'm Tom Rhodes.
And Tom Rhodes, you are a...
Lovely man.
He is lovely.
A thought-provoking individual.
If somebody asked me that, I'd say just man, and then maybe I might throw in lover.
Yeah.
Beyond that,
But I mean, this is a special year for Tom Rhodes because he's celebrating, 30 years in the same profession. That's how many people can say that these days.
Yeah, February 4th will be 30 years.
February 4th?
Since my first open mic night, I've done nothing else my entire life. When I was 16 years old, I bagged groceries in a grocery store in Oviedo, Florida. And then I started being a comedian when I was 17.
How did you actually know that you wanted to be a comedian?
Well, my family, especially my father, was obsessed with stand-up comedy. My dad loved comedy. My dad had lots of comedy albums.
Who was his poison? Yeah.
My dad loved Richard Pryor. I think Pryor was his favorite. You know, and in the 70s, Pryor had a lot more sting. You know, the black-white relationships hadn't been talked about. You know, I think a lot of people looking back on Pryor now, it's been done so much. It's been regurgitated by so many black American comedians that, like, you look back at it now and it's not that powerful. But at the time, it was, it was very taboo and hilarious. My dad loved Pryor. My dad loved Bill Cosby. My dad loved Bob Newhart. And... Jonathan Winters. So we had these albums in my house, and I would lie on the living room floor and listen to them. And my family is originally from Washington, D.C. My uncle did open mic comedy for 1 year, and my father took me to see him when I was 12. And it was a place called El Brookman's, and the stage was next to the entrance. And we came in, and I was wearing a Washington Redskins jacket. And the comedian on stage pulled me on stage, and he interviewed me like I was the coach of the Redskins. And I was only 12, and I gave bashful, dopey 12-year-old one-word answers. Yes and no. But I'll never forget standing on that stage and seeing all those happy people and their teeth and their heads thrown back in laughter. And that moment changed my life. And from then onward, I never, ever considered doing anything else.
Seriously, so it was that clear. From that moment, there was Tom Rhodes' life prior to being on stage with that guy, and then there was Tom Rhodes' life after.
Yeah, I started keeping little notebooks, making notes, and then I really became a student of stand-up comedy. I would take the TV guide, and I would highlight, like Johnny Carson, like the nights comedians would be on, and I would stay up, and I would watch the comedians, and then HBO started doing, hour specials, and I would study them.
I just have to think of the 12-year-old on that stage. And when we started this tour, the Amsterdam, or Netherlands tour, you were at the Hotel Nacht. You know, it's always awkward when there's a little whippersnapper, little young kid in the audience. And sure enough, first show that you did coming here to Amsterdam, and there was a 12-year-old kid in the audience. Now, you tailored a lot of that show to that 12-year-old kid. And
yeah,
I
I saw him and I said, "How old are you, kid?" And he said, 12. And he's sitting next to his father, who I assumed to be his father. And I said, "I want you to know that my father took me to a stand-up comedy show when I was 12 years old. And it's the reason that I'm standing here today. So, kid, I want you to take a look at your future." This is how it all turns out.
And now a barrage of anal sex jokes.
Well, I mean, I did... I did all the...
let's be honest, you have your fair share of them in the act. I've seen it.
I do. And I do the thing about my 12-year-old nephew and how I gave him all the best nightclub heckler comeback line so he could, defend himself from the bullies at school.
And just give me 2 of those, the 2 best ones, because they're pretty good.
I'd call you a cocksucker, but I know you're trying to quit. You may have noticed that I'm a little overweight, and that's because every time I fuck your mom, she gives me a cookie. Remember, kid, open with the cookie, close with the cocksucker. No one will ever top you,
Well, there'll be one of 2 reactions. There'll either be a stunned silence and the other guy will be completely defeated by this barrage of profanity, or he's going to get his ass kicked really badly. Yeah. Extra bad. Extra bad.
Yeah, sometimes you have to leave through the kitchen out the back door.
Right.
So how exactly did you become a professional? How does that work?
I grew up in Oviedo, Florida. It's a small town outside of Orlando. Oviedo was a small, charming citrus village when I grew up there. We had 1 stoplight and a tractor crossing. And there were orange groves everywhere. And it was great. I grew up barefoot, running around orange groves, playing baseball year-round. And it was a really small school. And everybody knew I wanted to be a stand-up comedian. So I was asked to do everything. I got to host the morning and afternoon announcements. I got to host all the pep rallies and all the talent shows. And I would always do a different theme for the pep rallies, like Ghostbusters when that was big, and Indiana Jones. And, I always made different themes for the pep rallies. And then, hosting the talent shows, I would do monologues. And then the most influential teacher that I had, he said he would give me the first 5 minutes of every class. The class had a little stage in it where you would get up and give your speeches. And so I would come in the first 5 minutes, I would do, a little monologue of jokes. And there were students that weren't in that class that would sneak in. It was like, it got to be kind of popular. And then I loved that. I loved writing speeches. It was everything, all my talents, everything I was about. And that was my favorite class. And I absolutely was as well behaved as I could possibly be. I had nothing but love and respect for Mr. Martin. And then when I was 17, and I had been planning it for a long time, I took a fake ID. There was a local comedy club called the Funny Farm in Orlando. And I didn't have a driver. I didn't have a car yet. My dad actually drove me to my first open mic night. And I was embarrassed to have my dad go with me, and I wanted to look older. So he actually waited in the car for me while I went in, which was actually kind of cool because then on the drive home, I got to tell him all about it. And this worked, this didn't work. I remember one character I wrote, this is 84. Boy George was huge. And I did this character called Boy Tom. And I took a Twister board game and I made a dress out of it. and I came out and I was singing, "Come, I'm a comedian," something like that, But I mean, there was some real purity to it.
Of course. I mean, just standing up in that outfit and singing that.
It's very sweet.
Yeah, man.
But my comedy at the time, I was a teenager in this nightclub adult world.
Right.
My thoughts were the thoughts that a 17-year-old has. Like, my big closer was about going on a date in my dad's Chrysler LeBaron and parking with this girl after the date. And I'm making the moves on her. We're kissing, and I make my big move, and I unbutton her pants. And she grabs my wrist and pushes my hand away, and she says, "If I do anything with you, what's it gonna mean?" And I said, "Well, for you, a ride home."
Oh. Thank you, everybody. Good night.
Right?
Exactly.
2 weeks after Tom graduated high school, he went on the road playing small clubs all over the United States.
Tom moved to San Francisco in 1989. Just as his hair grew long, the scene there was exploding, and he got sexy.
MTV courted him. He even got a few half-hour specials.
And then Comedy Central came to San Francisco, somebody saw me, and I got to do 2 Drink Minimum. After 2 Drink Minimum, I filmed these commercials, little 30-second. They filmed my jokes like they were rock videos. And the first series of 6 were done in a jail cell with, like, steam. And a lot of people were making fun of Chelsea Clinton at the time. She was because she was ugly or whatever. And I did this bit about, I think you're a sweet little biscuit, Chelsea Clinton. I think you have boss hair, and I would love to braid it sometime. And it was just like this kind of love poem in defense of her. And that one was great, hugely received. And they were so popular, Comedy Central then hired me to do another series of 6. And then I became like the spokesman for the channel. They had me doing everything.
People don't realize that.
I covered the Super Bowl,
really cool.
and this is the beginning of Comedy Central. I got to cover the Super Bowl, the Dream Team in Chicago. Wow. I went on tour with the Horde Festival, this rock festival, like the Black Crowes and Sheryl Crow, Ziggy Marley.
All the crows.
Yeah. And then Levi's was the sponsor, and they got I had my own tour bus with like Levi's and Comedy Central logos on it, and then my tour bus was in the caravan of all the tour buses, and then I'm filming this festival. So all these things were going great, and then Comedy Central they gave me their very first development deal contract in the network's history for me to do anything I wanted to do. And it was like being a junior filmmaker, if I had an idea, they were ready to do it. So it's 1994. Vietnam just opened up for Americans to travel there. Because of my father, him being a helicopter pilot in Vietnam, that was a huge part of his identity. And he would go to these helicopter pilot Vietnam buddy reunions every year. And it just, I grew up obsessed with Vietnam. I read tons of books on it, saw all the movies. And so I said, what about if I go to Vietnam and do like a travel thing, travel documentary special. We'll call it Viva Vietnam, and I'll go there and I'll get to have fun for the guys who didn't get to go there and have fun.
Wow.
Hey, what's shaking? This is Tom. I can't come to the phone because I gotta go to Vietnam. Why Vietnam? Hey, do I need a reason? Did we have one the first time? Leave me some love.
I did some funny things. I brought Rock'em Sock'em robots with me, and I fought people wherever I went. I did the Jane Fonda workout tape in Hanoi with a bunch of old women.
Of course.
Because Vietnam veterans hate Jane Fonda because she went to Hanoi. We went to a park in Hanoi.
Right. Yeah. People forget that bit of history. That's brilliant.
We went to this park. Yeah. Vietnam veterans still, like the Vietnam veterans reunions, there's these urinal targets with Jane Fonda, and it says Hanoi Jane. They call her Hanoi Jane. Yeah. And so there's veterans in America still peeing on Jane's face because they hate her for going to Hanoi. So there are these women doing Tai Chi in a park, and technology was not what it is today. We had to run cables, extension cables, like for 2 blocks to a plug, and we had a TV and a VCR with like a VHS tape of the Jane Fonda workout tape.
Are you ready? Yeah! Let's warm up! All right, starting to the right, down, and up, down, up, down, reverse it, down and up. Work those thighs, reverse it.
And these old women loved it. They instantly started doing it. And so here I am in this park doing the Jane Fonda workout tape. And then I set up a slip and slide on China Beach, the world's most dangerous place to set up a slip and slide.
Wow.
And
Why?
because there were landmines everywhere.
Oh.
Yeah, I mean not now, but I mean that at the time.
Yeah.
I watched it a year or two ago, and some things are dated, but I think it really holds up.
Tom Rhodes said he never wanted to do a sitcom, but after the success of his show Viva Vietnam on Comedy Central, prime time came a-knockin' in the form of Mr. Rhodes, the hilarious hijinks of a long-haired, rebellious high school teacher.
Well, I'll give you a minute to get used to looking at me. I'm Tom Rhodes, your new English lit teacher. They hired me because I wrote a novel that won a couple of awards. Only sold 84 copies. And 48 of those were to people who thought they were buying the Howard Stern book.
It lasted just one season.
I had gotten pretty red hot on Comedy Central, and then there was a bidding war between NBC, Fox, and HBO. I was the belle of the ball.
How did that feel?
1994. It felt great. And then so HBO was just offering a special. The real money battle was between Fox and NBC. And, you know, Fox was kind of like the American Gladiators network and all that. So to me, it was a no-brainer. To me, NBC was American comedy. SNL, Johnny Carson, David Letterman, sitcoms, Cheers, Taxi, Cosby Show, no-brainer, NBC. I belong on the Peacock. And that's how I made the decision.
I should let you know that I just watched it.
What, my pilot?
Man, you were cute. Holy crap, you were cute. Yeah. And you know what? I looked almost exactly like you back then.
I believe it.
I too was considerably thinner than I am now, and I had long hair. And I just thought to myself, that could have been me standing next to Ron Glass.
Wow.
Yeah.
One of my Barney Miller heroes.
And Barney Miller was one of my favorite shows of all time. Yeah. And so for the pilot, they took 4 of my jokes. Everybody loved the pilot, and everything seemed to be going great. I'm writing a book now, and I actually kept a diary during that period. And I recently read the diary, and originally I wanted to be a public defender lawyer because of Barney Miller.
The character rather than a teacher.
Did not want to be a teacher.
Right, because we should step back and just say that the show basically involved you being the sort of the square peg in the round hole teacher in this prep school.
It was Dead Poet Society.
Yeah, it was like Dead Poet Society. Yeah.
The hip teacher in a stuffy prep school.
Right.
And my original idea, I wanted to be a public defender lawyer and the voice of the voiceless, dregs of society, like Barney Miller had the people being arrested coming into so you got lots of chances for cameos and all this, social commentary on things happening. And then I thought I could get my comedic performances out in front of the jury and the judge and things. So NBC had a lawyer show fail, and they said, can you make Tom a teacher? Well, now in retrospect, somebody must have known that year there were going to be 5 other teacher shows. So, I mean, I should have stuck with my original idea. And when the teacher show started, then we developed it, the kids were supposed to be without names. They were going to be faceless characters almost. It was supposed to be about the adult teacher situation.
Which was great.
I was going to have my cousin / best friend was going to be a bartender. I would go talk to him at the end of the day or end of the episodes. And then my father was like a groundskeeper guy on the thing. And the second episode, I played an English teacher. I bring my favorite writer, who's supposed to be Charles Bukowski, and the character's name was Buck Pulaski, played by Brian Doyle Murray.
Yeah, right, yeah.
Brother, and he's supposed to be Charles Bukowski, and he shows up drunk, he vomits in the wastebasket, he flirts with the students, everything seemed to be going fine. Episode 2, and then they got rid of the younger students, brought in some older students, and the focus became all about the kids. I got no more jokes. I just gave nice advice to the kids, and I felt like a second banana on my own show.
How did that happen, actually?
It was very frustrating, and I would go talk to the executive producer. I'm working on this book, and I'm reading the diary, like leading up to the casting and the pilot episode, and he's telling me, I'm your guy. I'm the one that fights your battles, you know? And if something's wrong, you don't like, this show's supposed to be about you. We don't want you to act. We want you to be Tom Rhodes. I'm reading the words that he said to me, like, you know, wow. I'm so glad I kept these diaries. Yeah.
I mean, your name is in the title.
And then the show goes on, and then I go talk to him, and he's not fighting my battles. I would bring him jokes. I go, look, anyone I consider, it would say in the script, and it was all hair jokes because I had long hair. Hey, Fabio. Hey, Cream Rinse. Hey, Kenny G. How many fucking hair jokes can there be? And I would go talk to him and say, look, man, anybody I considered a hero would never let anybody top them verbally. That you always, and especially as a comedian, somebody in the crowd says something to you, you crush them like a bug. And in the script, every time somebody says something nasty to me, it says Tom reacts.
Right.
And then I'm like, how many times can I just shrug? I always thought, you know, when you read about actors or comedians in sitcoms and they're unhappy with scripts and they throw tantrums and they kick over to the water cooler, I always thought that was, you know, really stupid and childish. But now, after going through what I went through, I wish I would have kicked over the water cooler.
Looking at your face, I can see that you're still pissed. You're still pissed.
Still pissed.
Yeah. How long did the show last?
1 year.
And how did it do?
I mean, you know what? At the time, it was right under what NBC, because they had, you know, their Murderers Row line. It was NBC must-see TV. They wanted like 16 million viewers a week. We actually averaged 13 million a week.
Yeah.
Which today, in today's world, you get 8 million and you are a runaway success. But at the time, in the salad days of NBC, 13 was just under their bar. You know, I mean, and then the writing was weak. They did for a first season show, too many. We did a Valentine's episode, a Halloween episode, a Christmas episode. Yeah, sure. Every school class goes on a Christmas trip with their teacher. Wow. So, I mean, there was just, the writing was weak. I had no control. No. I had a really good friend, comedian. I tried to get a writing job, and I couldn't even do that. And my name is on the script. So it was frustrating. And then, it's not the writers people remember for having a failed show, it's the comedian. And, you know, I had to live with this stench for a few years.
Well, that's the question: is how did this show? Because it sounds like you're saying it just didn't get picked up for the next season at all.
It went away quietly. You know, a lot of shows are canceled and it's trumpeted loudly in the press when they hatchet a show. I mean, fortunately, mine just went away quietly between seasons.
So how did this affect your career? You were on fire at the start of this thing.
Yeah, I moved to New York City, back to New York. I always swore if I ever had any money, I would live there with style. So I got a Rockstar apartment in the Wall Street area and was doing 5-6 nights a week, 5-6 shows a night. And that's really thrilling, you know, go from stage to taxi to stage to taxi. And then also in that time, I started making trips over to London. And getting in with London is what led to all my other work around Europe, which led to work around the world. You know, I just got deeply back into stand-up comedy.
But just for a moment, I'm going to step into the, you know, crazy time machine and alternate reality. And I just have to wonder, since you just really brought us back to that moment in the mid-90s where you have your show is on NBC, the must-see TV, the Murderers Row. What would have happened? Like, let's say that new management came in and said, like, no, damn it, this guy's name is in the title. We're going to make it work. You do get your friend on the writers team. Like, what? I don't know.
I was living in the Hollywood Hills.
Yeah.
I had an apartment with all glass walls. I could see downtown Los Angeles and all the shimmering lights of Los Angeles. And I lived with a beautiful actress, and all we did was walk around naked drinking wine from goblets. And had that show been a success, I would have become a total head up my own ass schmuck. And I would have lived in a little bubble.
You
and
would have lived in Los Angeles for sure.
I would not be the stand-up comedian that I am today.
Right.
I would not be the human being I am today.
So
it actually probably was one of the best things that ever happened to me.
Wow. Okay.
When the moment came that you saw that it was official, probably it came down in the form of a letter that they did not renew the program, and you read that letter.
I read it in the newspaper.
You read it in the newspaper?
Read it in the newspaper.
Christ.
Nobody called me.
What thought went through your head when you saw that?
Well, I thought I'll have another show next week.
Right. That's the first thought, isn't it?
I thought I'll have another show next week.
And other
let's
people...
get rid of this piece of shit and let's go on to the next show.
And there are people who have said, you know what? No, I'm going to stick it out in Los Angeles.
And the thing is, too, man,
work.
people always go, I love actors, got acting friends, and there was somebody I had on my podcast recently, and they were like, yeah, and acting, and you do your scene, and then, you go sit in your trailer or your dressing room all day, and you wait until you're called. I go, oh, yeah. When you're a secondary character, when you're the star, you're in every scene. And you have to carry the plot like an albatross from scene to scene. So I'm there rehearsing all day, and all the other actors are going off and, playing video games or doing whatever. And I'm, oh my God, this terrible plot. I have to walk 8 feet over that way now.
Someone said about Eddie Murphy recently. They were saying, hey, Eddie Murphy, man, you remember those old stand-up days? Do you remember the stand-up specials that you used to do? Don't you ever dream about just going back up on stage and doing some stand-up? And apparently the quote was why would I do that? I'm making movies now. And, isn't that?
Yeah.
Ugh. That explains a lot. But you did not do that. You went back to...
Well, stand-up comedy is my oxygen. It's the reason I get up in the morning. It's why I'm alive on this earth. And it's what I didn't want to be an actor, and I never dreamed of having my own show. It just happened. My high school baseball coach used to say you should never be trying to hit a home run. A home run should be the accident of a line drive. You get such solid wood on the ball, it goes over the fence. So, I think I was getting solid wood on the ball, and I, hit some home runs. But stand-up comedy is my number one passion in life.
If you could do it all over again, would you?
I would, and I would say, if you don't want to do my public defender idea, we're not in business. Goodbye. And I would wait, like Seinfeld. Because Seinfeld said no for years before he finally did a show. And that's the way to do it. You just keep saying no. As a comedian, you only have two things. You have your integrity and you have your power to say no. So I would have said no. I would still do it, and then I would have held tooth and nail to my public defender idea.
But you were just a kid, really, weren't you? How old were you?
I was 29 when the show happened.
Oh, really? You looked way younger. way younger. Really. You looked like you were 22 to me, or 21.
Something about having sex 4 times a day makes your skin very youthful and luminescent.
Yeah?
Well, anyway.
Humble brag.
The next phase in Tom's life was that of the itinerant stand-up, traveling the world. He worked a lot in London, then he did some stand-up in the Netherlands where he met a Dutch girl. They fell in love. He moved to Amsterdam.
They broke up, and he was just about to leave the country when a Dutch TV company approached him with an idea.
They had bought a concept to do an American-style late-night talk show.
Like a Letterman-ish kind of style. Yeah.
But we need a name other than David Letterman.
Same format, everything the same. I had a musical sidekick. You come out from behind the big curtain, got a $2,000 suit on, you do the monologue on the X, then you come to the desk, you banter with your musical sidekick, do a sketch, bring out guest 1, sketch, guest 2, sketch, band, good night, But they bought this concept, and they said, and they wanted it to be like a flashy American late night talk show, and we're called the guy Kevin Masters. So they bought the concept with a name already involved. They already named the host before they found the host, which, I mean, again, a bad television idea. Yeah. Television is rife with bad decisions. And that would have been fine had my name been Marty Finkelstein or something like that. I actually know a guy named Marty Finkelstein, and he loves that I mention him all the time when this comes up. But I'm pretty proud of my name, and you spend your life as a comedian trying to establish your name. So I fought it, and they said, no, it's going to be Kevin Masters. And I don't know, I got to stay in this little country that I had fallen in love with. And the show, the main humor came from a foreigner experiencing Dutch culture. The other thing that they thought a lot of humor would come from was the fact that I'm an American and I'm interviewing all these Dutch celebrities and I have no idea who they are. So,
joke's on you.
So there was a certain cuteness to that, you know, you could squeeze that sponge for a few drops of humor here and there. Seasons 2 and 3, we did 3 seasons. They changed the name to Kevin Masters starring Tom Rhodes. Very complicated title. Yeah. And then even when I would go back to the States, friends of mine would go, so did Kevin Masters get sick and you took his place? Why is it? And it was just too complicated to explain. But that's what it was. My favorite part about the show was every episode I would make a 5-minute film where I would experience something of Dutch culture. One day I spent with a Dutch farmer. I had the wooden shoes on, and I'm doing all these farm chores. And then I walked into an electric fence. He said in Dutch, "Look out for the electric fence," but I don't speak Dutch. And I walked into it, and I got electrocuted. And that was a really big laugh to the studio audience when my body jolted and contorted from getting electricity shot through it. You got to admit, it was pretty funny.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, it wasn't planned, and it was real. Exactly. Dutch people love that. I got to cover the Prime Minister debates. I got a tour of gay Amsterdam by the guy who organizes the gay parade every year. I was given a tour of the red light district by a woman, former prostitute, who does social work for the prostitutes.
The Rode Draad.
And helps them. All these elements of Dutch society and the laws were explained to me.
Yeah.
And why things are. And I got the greatest education on the Netherlands. And what I always say to people, it was like I had a magic passport to the Netherlands because Dutch people are very stoic. They're not easy to get to know. The stereotype about Americans is we'll tell you our whole life in the first 2 minutes that you meet an American. Dutch people aren't like that. You got to get to know Dutch people, before you know anything about them. And then I tell you, the people who watched my show the most were the allochtones, the foreigners. Yeah. I would go around to these villages and filming stuff around the country, and these Moroccan kids would go crazy. I felt like Elvis Presley, and these Moroccan kids would say, "You get to make the jokes that we get in trouble for making." And that's why they liked it.
Yeah.
So, there were a lot of cheesy elements about that show, and I think the concept itself was kind of cheesy, and they wanted a big, flashy, American-style show. Like, I showed Tenacious D. I gave Tenacious D a tour of...
Great clip.
I put that on YouTube as well. Steve O came on.
From Jackass.
The very first Jackass was premiering, and he came on and he stapled his nutsack to his thigh. And because you can show anything on Dutch television.
Yeah.
And then they on Dutch television, they had a close-up of it. And I did have that clip on YouTube, but YouTube took it down because somebody complained. Don't watch YouTube videos with your mom standing over your back, kid. Okay?
Kevin Masters came to an end, but this time there was another show hot on its heels, a travel show. Tom got married to a Dutch woman, and he took her with him. And now they travel all over the world all the time.
You don't have a home base anymore, do you, right?
I haven't lived anywhere in 8 years. I left Los Angeles in 2006, and I put everything into storage. So I've had everything in storage for 8 years, and I just travel the world constantly. And now my wife, we've been together for 5 years, and she travels with me. And when we have time off, we'll go, depends where we are in the world. Like the last few years when I finish a tour of Europe, we'll fly down to Rome, and we've rented an apartment by the Vatican the last couple of years. I finished an Asian tour 2 years ago, and then we went to Bali for 2 weeks. Last July, I finished up stuff on the East Coast in the States, and we went to Key West for 2 weeks. Yeah. So depending where we are, and depending where we are, and then it's because we don't live anywhere, we get to live everywhere, and it's great.
I guess I have a personal question as a follow-up, but we're recording this at my house, and do you need me to do any laundry for you? That's
yes. Yes.
I'll help.
When you pick me up to take me to Den Haag tomorrow, I will bring a pillowcase from the American Hotel with socks and underwear that need to be laundered.
That's
a great. That's a good gift. That's the best gift you could give me is to ask me, do you need anything washed?
I mean, it sounds like, in so many ways, like, oh my God, it's you're living the dream. And yet, wow, some of the creature comforts, I guess you
Why wouldn't somebody make this a television show? Why isn't somebody filming this now? My tour of the Netherlands and us sitting here and you offering to do my laundry.
What's happening?
We need to grow beards. I think we need to grow beards and maybe have some homespun expressions and maybe some solidly conservative views.
Maybe we should make duck whistles.
Duck whistles, yeah.
Yeah.
We should sexually exploit our toddlers.
Yeah.
That seems to be big for American television.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Making princesses.
How brilliant was the show last night at the Rhodes Theater?
Well, that was a sort of homecoming, wasn't it?
Actually, yeah. So let's tie this up as last night.
Yeah.
You did an evening of stand-up in the very same theater where you did the Kevin Masters show, where you did your Dutch show in the same theater.
The Rosen Theater, which Boom Chicago has moved there. For years, they've been on Leidseplein.
Yep.
I think it's stroke of genius. I mean, I think that Leidseplein location was golden forever, but that Rosen Theater and the way they've remodeled it is so beautiful. And for me, that place has sentimental value because that's where I filmed the Kevin Masters starring Tom Rhodes program.
Well, that's the question. The question is when you got up out on that stage for the first time in 10 years, and that was, you say, a very important time in your life, and there you were again up on that stage. How'd you feel?
There was no way that was going to be a mediocre show. I came to throw comedy thunderbolts, and I had a lot in my head. I thought I had an hour prepared. It ended up that I did like an hour 15. I thought they started getting a little tired the last 10, and then I get off stage and I looked at my watch and wow, no wonder. I was on an hour and 15, hour 20 minutes.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's how focused and possessed I was to make that a great show last night. And, having been there in 10 years, I'm friends with the ghosts that live in there. And, I wanted them to be glad that little Tommy was home.
And were the ghosts glad?
They, yeah. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Tom Rhodes, thank you very much, man.
This was
brother.
Great. This was a lot of fun. Thanks, gents. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam.
Dewey. So there you have it. Tom Rhodes, 40 years in comedy this year.
This was the Amsterdam Comedy Podcast. For more information, check out our Facebook page, facebook.com/Amsterdam Comedy Podcast.
And next week, Eddie Murphy stops by to tell us how he stopped being funny in 1989.
So that's it. Are we going to get in trouble from that? Now we're never getting him on the show, man.
Well, he won a Mark Twain Award.
Is that true?
Yeah. He
Eddie.
Single-handedly saved,
Oh, let's wait. Well, he did. We were talking about this a lot all week. How Eddie Murphy saved Saturday Night Live in a year when it wasn't being all that funny. He was like the funny highlight. So, Eddie, if you're listening to this, we appreciate you.
Yeah, I just hope you do stand up again.
Maybe he just doesn't need this shit anymore.
No.
He's done. He's like, I don't have to be funny for you people anymore. Go to Dave Chappelle.
And good for Dave Chappelle.
Yeah. So that's it for me, Jonathan Goubert.
And me, Greg Shapiro. And remember,
if it ain't funny, don't say it at the end of your podcast.